She told me to lighten up, it's just a joke. So I ended the wedding, read the prenup out loud, walked away with my family, and she had no idea she'd become the internet's favorite punchline. I was 28, ready to marry a woman I thought was my forever. A woman named Vanessa, 27, who I believed was my soulmate until her love for attention slowly started cracking open the reality I didn't want to face. For 4 long years, we had built a life together, shared dreams, planned a future, and created a picture that looked perfect from the outside. But underneath that image, there was something darker, something she treated as harmless fun but slowly became a pattern that cut into me over time. Vanessa loved pranks, loved being the center of attention, loved turning serious moments into a stage where she could perform. When I proposed, she pretended to reject me for 5 full minutes before laughing and accepting, leaving me standing there with my heart racing and everyone around us confused. When I got a promotion, instead of celebrating my hard work, she told a whole room of people that I got lucky, turning my achievement into something small. She always dismissed it as a joke, but somehow the joke was always on me. Still, I loved her, and I tried to believe that this was just a quirky part of her personality. But things took a turn when her friends started dropping hints about a big surprise she had planned for the wedding. Every time I tried to ask what it was, they just laughed and said, "You'll see." Their smirks sent a sharp warning straight into my bones. I didn't know what Vanessa was planning, but I could feel deep down that it wouldn't be something good. That's when I called my friend Mark, a lawyer, and told him I needed a little insurance. Together we created a completely fake prenup full of serious-looking legal terms and one key clause that stated, if either person publicly humiliated the other before signing the marriage papers, all joint financial obligations would be nullified. It was not enforceable at all, but it looked very real. I printed it, signed it, and kept it ready, just in case. The wedding day arrived, beautiful, bright, and filled with the kind of happiness I had always imagined. Everything seemed perfect until we reached the altar. As we stood there, moments away from exchanging vows, Vanessa suddenly grabbed the microphone with a wide grin. She faced the guests, lifted a hand dramatically, and said, "I have a little surprise for my wonderful soon-to-be husband." My stomach dropped. She turned toward the entrance and added, "Let's give a warm welcome to the real love of my life." The doors opened, and in walked Jason. Her ex-gasps filled the room, while Vanessa beamed like she had just won a prize. She called him up to the altar. Acting like this was the funniest thing anyone could ever witness. I felt the floor tilt under me as Jason walked up smirking. Then she looked at me and said, "Babe." I just couldn't say, "I do," without making sure Jason approved. "We've been talking a lot lately." Talking a lot. Those words crushed the air right out of my lungs. Jason patted my back and said, "Relax, man. It's just a joke." The bridesmaids laughed like this was the best comedy show they had ever seen. But Vanessa had more. She pulled out her phone and showed me a group chat where she and her bridesmaids had placed bets on whether I would cry at the altar, whether she would fake cold feet, and even whether I would still go through with the wedding after her surprise. The room went silent. My mother looked sick. My father's face turned red. My best man whispered a curse. And Vanessa just stood there expecting me to laugh. She nudged me and said, "Come on, babe, lighten up." That's when I smiled, because she had no idea what was coming. I turned to the officiant and calmly asked if there was a table where we could sign the marriage license. He nodded, confused. I walked over, picked up my black folder, and held it for everyone to see. "Before we continue, I'd like to share a document with my fiancé," I said. Vanessa's smile faded as I pulled out the fake prenup. I read out the clause about public humiliation and nullified financial obligations. Gasps filled the room again. Her face turned pale. She whispered, "What is that? This isn't real." I smiled and replied smoothly, "It's very real." Jason tried to laugh it off, but I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Oh, I take pranks very seriously." Vanessa began to panic, begging me to relax, saying she wasn't trying to hurt me. But I simply tilted my head and said, "Then here's my prank. The wedding is canceled." The room erupted. Guests' whispers burned through the air. My best man played Hit the Road Jack on his phone. Vanessa looked like she was about to collapse. She screamed, "You're not serious." But I turned to my parents and said calmly, "We're done here." My dad immediately started telling guests the wedding was over. Jason tried to leave quietly, but I looked at him and said, "You like being around her? She's all yours." He backed away instantly and nearly ran out. Vanessa fell apart at the altar, screaming my name as I walked away. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free. Walking out of that wedding was the clearest moment of my entire life. The sun outside felt warmer, the air felt cleaner, and I felt like I had just escaped a storm I should have never been in. My best man, my parents, and a few guests walked with me, leaving behind the chaos Vanessa had created. Even as we stepped outside, I could hear her screaming my name from inside, but I never turned around. I was done being the punchline in her endless games. The fallout started almost immediately. Vanessa began calling and texting, switching between acting confused to throwing accusations about how I had humiliated her. She claimed I overreacted, that it was just a harmless joke, that she didn't mean for it to go so far. But I didn't respond. When she realized I was ignoring her, she tried to rewrite the story, saying she would tell everyone I abandoned her at the altar. What she didn't expect was receipts. My best man had screenshotted her group chat with the bridesmaids, the bets, the jokes, the mockery. Those screenshots spread fast. Guests who witnessed her stunt shared their own experiences. Within days, her reputation crashed completely. People she considered friends started distancing themselves. Even her own parents called me to apologize, saying they told her not to pull any stunts. Then came the financial consequences. Vanessa demanded I reimburse her for wedding costs, which was hilarious because I paid for nearly everything: the venue, the catering, the honeymoon trip. With one call, I canceled it all. She was left with nothing but a broken image and a viral disaster hanging over her head. A week later, she showed up at my door, looking exhausted, her eyes red from crying. She tried to apologize, saying she never thought I would actually leave, that she wanted to fix things, that she loved me. I didn't believe a word. Instead, I handed her an envelope. Inside was a mock invitation to a fake wedding rehearsal scheduled for the same venue where she humiliated me. The note simply said, "Now we're even." She stared at it speechless while I closed the door in her face. Soon after, clips from the wedding went viral. She became known as the bride who got left at the altar for her own joke. People mocked her online, and she lost friends, job opportunities, and even family support. Jason ghosted her completely, and over time, she ended up alone and struggling, still trying to reach out to me for another chance. But I never responded. I rebuilt my life. I focused on healing, growing, and eventually met someone who treated me with respect. Someone who didn't need an audience to show love. Meanwhile, Vanessa became exactly what she tried to make me at the altar: a joke. And for the first time, I finally felt like I had won something bigger than any argument or any wedding. I won my self-respect back. And so, as the noise around Vanessa's collapse spread across our city, I began to understand something I had never allowed myself to see before, that walking away was not just about ending a relationship, but about reclaiming the pieces of myself I had slowly given up during those 4 long years. I spent countless days reflecting on the moments when I had stayed silent while she laughed at my efforts, the times when I allowed her pranks to cut deeper than I admitted, and the nights when I had convinced myself that love meant enduring whatever came my way. But now, standing on the other side of that broken wedding, I finally breathed in a kind of freedom that felt both unfamiliar and beautiful, like stepping into sunlight after too many days spent in the shade. Each morning, I woke up without waiting for a punchline, without wondering if I was about to become the target of another one of her thoughtless stunts. And that realization alone filled me with a calm strength I had never felt before. During those early days of healing, messages continued to pour in from people who had attended the wedding. Some reached out to offer sympathy, others to share their shock, and a few even confessed that they had always worried Vanessa would pull something reckless eventually. My inbox was a mix of apology, confusion, and support, Yet what surprised me the most was the relief I felt every time someone validated what I had experienced for years. I no longer felt like I had been too sensitive or too serious or too unable to take a joke, because the entire world had seen exactly how far she had been willing to go. Even my extended family, people who rarely reached out unless it was a holiday or a birthday, called to tell me they were proud of how I handled things. My mother, who had always tried to be fair and neutral, finally admitted that Vanessa's behavior had worried her for a long time, and hearing her say those words released a weight I had no idea I was still carrying. Meanwhile, Vanessa's life continued to spiral. Every week, a new clip or edited meme surfaced online, turning her attempted wedding prank into a spectacle for millions to laugh at. The internet had no mercy, and once they labeled her as the bride who mocked her own fiancé at the altar, there was no escaping the flood of judgment. Job interviews were canceled, brand deals she had hoped for vanished, and even her own friends slowly backed away until she had no one left to defend her. Her social media pages became graveyards of deleted posts and blocked comments, but nothing could stop the avalanche that had started the moment she handed a microphone to her ex-boyfriend and declared him the real love of her life. And as much as I tried to stay out of the chaos, people constantly sent me screenshots and updates, trying to keep me informed about the latest drama. But I was done being part of her story. All I wanted now was peace. Healing did not happen overnight, but it happened slowly, softly, and honestly. I found myself rediscovering hobbies I had abandoned in the chaos of trying to keep a relationship alive. I started running again, feeling my body grow stronger with every mile. I returned to painting, something I used to love before life became a carousel of emotional whiplash. And most meaningfully, I began spending more time with my family, sitting with my parents during quiet evenings, talking with my uncle about his garden, and watching my cousins grow up without feeling distracted or exhausted. For the first time in years, my life felt stable, like a grounded house instead of a tent threatened by every wind that passed. My mind was clear, my heart was light, and my future didn't feel like a performance waiting for the next unexpected twist. Months passed before I even considered dating again, not because I feared new pain, but because I wanted to enter my next relationship as a whole person. Someone who knew his worth, someone who would never again accept a love built on humiliation masquerading as humor. And when I eventually met someone new, it was not through a dramatic encounter or a grand gesture, but through a simple conversation at a coffee shop where she worked. Her name was Elena, a kind, thoughtful woman who listened when I spoke and laughed with me instead of at me. Our first conversations felt peaceful instead of chaotic, and our connection grew gradually, like the soft opening of a window letting warm air into a quiet room. I never had to guess her intentions or fear hidden surprises. She was transparent, warm, and gentle in all the ways Vanessa had never been. And for the first time, I experienced love without fear, without games, without feeling like I was the setup for a joke I didn't know about. As my life finally stabilized, Vanessa continued her desperate attempts to reach me. Sometimes she sent long paragraphs filled with apologies, promises, and regrets. Sometimes she sent anger, accusations, and blame. And sometimes she sent nothing but silence, only to return weeks later with a fresh message claiming she was ready to make things right. But every time I saw her name pop up on my screen, I felt the same calm resolve, a quiet reminder that I had outgrown the chaos she represented. So I chose not to reply, not out of pettiness, but out of self-respect. Because I finally understood that some doors should stay closed, not locked, not slammed, just gently, permanently closed. And with each day, that decision felt less like a choice and more like a victory over the person I used to be. The last time I heard about Vanessa was through a former mutual friend who mentioned that she had moved back to her parents' house, trying to start over, searching for a life that no longer resembled the one she had expected. The wedding that was supposed to catapult her into online fame had instead turned her into a cautionary tale about ego, humiliation, and the cost of turning love into a spectacle. Meanwhile, I had built a future that was quiet, stable, and filled with people who valued me for who I was, not for how much entertainment they could extract from my pain. Life moved forward, steady and strong, and I walked toward it with a heart that had finally found its balance. In the end, Vanessa wanted a stage, a spotlight, and a laugh. And she got all three, but not in the way she imagined. She became the punchline, the clip, the viral moment. And I became something simpler, something better, free.